blanket. All rise.
Court is now back in session.
You want to make your JOA argument now? Okay. Yes.
Judge, do you want me to give you a heads up as to the content of the case?
Yes.
This is against my argument. So I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, the Supreme Court has ruled on the issue, but
Okay.
as to the felony murder judge, well, we are, at this time, defense is moving for judgment of acquittal. Specifically, I'll start with first-degree murder under the felony murder theory. Judge, it is our contention that at this time, the state has failed to make a prima facie case of aggravated child abuse sufficient to sustain a conviction for felony murder. I understand this, I've provided the court with State v. Sturdivant, Sturdivant. That's 94 Southern 3rd 434, Florida Supreme Court case from 2012. That case overturned Brooks v. State. However, we are arguing that that should apply. The facts as we have them in here, there's a single act that constitutes the aggravated child abuse and also the murder. The Supreme Court basically held that the legislature's intent, they specifically included aggravated child abuse under the felony murder statute, and so that destroys any argument regarding the merger doctrine. We understand that it is not, it would not be sufficient for somebody to be charged with with felony murder based on the underlying felony of aggravated battery. And our position is a child abuse is the exact same in aggravated battery with the additional requirement of the age of the victim. And so we do not believe that aggravated child abuse, especially when we have facts such as this, whereas the only evidence is that there is one act of releasing the child over the side of the bridge that caused her death, that should be sufficient for felony murder.
Okay.
As to the premeditation, Judge, at this time we are asking the court also to grant judgment of acquittal regarding premeditated murder in the light most favorable to the state. They have not adduced any evidence that the killing was with premeditation. We would agree that Phoebe is dead. However, in addition, the state has to prove that the killing was with premeditation, which is defined after is killing after consciously deciding to do so. The decision must be present in the mind at the time of the killing. The law does not fix the exact period of time that must pass between the formation of the premeditated intent to kill and the killing. The period of time must be long enough to allow reflection by the defendant. The premeditated intent to kill must be formed before the killing. We have no evidence at all before the killing that Mr. Jonchuck had formed any kind of intent. In fact, quite the opposite. According to Officer Vickers, he indicated that he had a blank expression, didn't respond or to anything that was being said to him. The only statement stated was, "You have no free will," which would actually be contrary to some kind of intent. There's no evidence at all regarding whether at the moment Mr. Jonchuck released Phoebe over the edge of the bridge, he had formed any intent. And so we are asking the court that to grant judgment of acquittal as to premeditated murder.
Okay, I'm going to deny both those JOA arguments. Thank you for providing this case. State v. Sturdivant, Supreme Court, 94 Southern 3rd 434, which clearly stands for the proposition that aggravated child abuse can be an underlying felony for felony murder, and the murder doctrine doesn't apply. And as to the premeditation aspect, in the light most favorable to the state, after Mr. Jonchuck stopped his car, he got out, he was confronted with Officer Vickers. He made whatever statement he did, continued on, took his daughter out of the back seat, took her out of the booster seat, and dropped her over the skyway, or over the Dick Misener Bridge. So that would be certainly enough time for premeditation to take place. And one could certainly, in the light most favorable to the state, find that the intent was there during that course of conduct. Do you have anything else you want to say? All right, you can call your first,
Actually, we do have another motion at this time.
okay.
At this time, Judge, we'd be moving for mistrial. The state elicited a number of statements in opening statement of which they have introduced no evidence that served no purpose other than to try to prejudice the jury, and arguing that they would be able to prove their case for premeditated murder. They indicated that he went over to Noemi's house, that he had professed his love for her, that he was a man scorned and started his premeditation at that moment because he was so upset as to what had happened. Additionally, they elicited during opening statement testimony from Michelle Jonchuck, who they called to the stand and intentionally did not introduce the testimony of after stating it in opening. In opening, they indicated that Mr. Jonchuck had had an argument with his mother a few days before this, and at that time made the statement, and that he repeated it multiple times, quote, "I'm going to do something to fuck your life up," end quote. Highly prejudicial. There is no evidence at all. It was argued not as rebuttal as to how they would rebut any insanity. It was argued as to how they would prove premeditated murder, both of those. And so they have not introduced any evidence of such. There's no way to unring the bell. That evidence was intentionally not introduced in front of the jury after laying that out in opening, and we are moving for mistrial.
Response.
Sorry, that was all said in anticipation of the evidence that is still going to come forward from this trial. The defense has already indicated that they're calling the mother and the father of the defendant to the stand. That evidence is going to come out. That was all in anticipation of the NGRI and the insanity arguments that were to come and that are still to come. They have a case that they're going to put on. We have a rebuttal case in which we're going to put on evidence and witnesses. So it was clear that I was arguing toward the insanity. That's why I made those arguments, and that evidence is still to come, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Motion denied. Okay, ready to have the jury back in? All right, let's bring them in, please.
Councilman Deputy Rice. Line them up. Bring them in. jury box and receive, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense did call Officer Andre Sousa.
Sir, if you would, stand right here for me, please. Face this clerk, raise your right hand, sir, take you.
You solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Now, sir, if you would step over here, have a seat in the red chair. Your loud and clear voice report. A little closer to the mic, all right?
Good afternoon, officers.
Yeah, can you hear me?
May I proceed? Could you please state your name?
Officer Andre Sousa.
Okay. And what is your occupation?
I'm a patrol officer at the St. Petersburg Police Department.
How long have you been with the St. Pete Police Department?
Almost 5 years now.
Okay. And what is your current assignment?
Currently assigned to day shift uniform patrol.
Okay. And back in January of 2015, what was your assignment?
I was assigned to late evening shift of uniform patrol. It was 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. and I worked District 1, which is the south end of the city.
And were you working on the night of January 7th into January 8th of 2015?
Yes, I was.
At some point, as you were working that night, did you hear the call out about the bridge?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And where approximately were you in the city when you heard that call out?
I was down at about 58th Avenue South, 31st Street. I was there near the Wave condos. I was finishing up on a call.
Okay. And when you heard the dispatch about, or heard the call out to the Dick Misener Bridge, what did you do?
I responded and met with the other officers, or to the area where the officers were on top of the bridge.
Okay, so did that take you traveling down I-275?
Yes, I got on I-275 there at the Pinellas Point exit, which is the farthest south, or farthest southern entrance to the interstate there.
When you got to the scene at the top of the Dick Misener Bridge, were there already a number of officers present?
There were a few officers, yes.
Did you stop at the top of the bridge?
No, I did not.
And why not?
I continued to drive. I realized we had no one else that had gone to look for the suspect vehicle at this point, so I began driving south to try to find the vehicle.
Okay. And as you did that, did you go over the Skyway Bridge?
Yes, I did.
And did you go into Manatee County?
Yes, I did.
And at some point, did you have a description of the car that you were looking for?
Yes, I did. I had a description of the vehicle as well as the plate information.
Okay. And it was the description of that car the white PT Cruiser?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And as you're traveling south on 275 and going towards Manatee County, did you see the suspect car?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were you the first officer that made contact or saw the car again after it had left the bridge?
Yes, I was.
And what did you do once you put eyes on the white PT Cruiser?
At this point, I got on the radio. I gave out the tag of the vehicle I saw, which was confirmed immediately by the other officer and by dispatch that it was the correct vehicle. I announced where I was, and I announced that I was going to be just keeping surveillance on the vehicle until another officer could get there.
Okay. And so obviously you had gotten up close enough to the car to read the tag number?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what lane were you traveling in on 275?
We were in the right lane.
When you say does that mean the PT Cruiser was also in that right lane?
Yes, the PT Cruiser was directly in front of me.
Okay. And the right lane, well, I'll move on. We know what the right lane is. And approximately how fast were you traveling?
We're doing about 70 miles per hour.
Okay. And at 70 miles per hour, were you keeping pace with the vehicle?
Yes, I was.
Okay. At the point when you initially observed the vehicle and you're doing the surveillance, Was there any sort of careless or unusual driving going on?
Not initially, no.
Did you have your lights and sirens on at this point?
No, I did not.
Why not?
At this point, I was still waiting for another officer there. I didn't want to conduct a stop until I had a backup officer there with me.
Okay. As you're traveling down 275, do you eventually approach the exit for I-75?
Yes, we did.
Right. And does the white PT Cruiser do something at the approach to I-75?
Yes.
And what happened?
At this point, he takes the ramp that takes him northbound on 75 towards Hillsborough County. At that point, there's a large semi-truck up ahead. The ramp is a single lane. At this point, I thought I was not seen by him. So at this point, he begins to pass that semi-truck on the emergency lane. He accelerates and passes the semi-truck on the left in the emergency lane, taking evasive movement to get around him there.
Okay, and so that happened on the on-ramp to 75 northbound?
Correct.
He goes around the semi in the emergency lane?
Yes.
Okay. And I think you just said this, but did you have your lights and sirens on yet at that point?
No, I did not.
All right. Did you follow him, follow the white PT Cruiser onto I-75 northbound?
Yes, I did.
And what lane were you in?
We're in the right lane.
And approximately what speed were you going?
About 70 miles an hour.
At this point, did you have any backup units right there with you yet?
Not immediately there. I knew I had one coming.
Okay, and would that have been Officer Gillis?
Yes, it was.
Okay. But she's not close enough to you yet at this point where you think it's appropriate to try to do the stop?
Correct.
As you are traveling northbound on I-75 following the PT Cruiser, do you eventually start to approach the Moccasin Wallow area?
Yes, we do.
And does the car do something, the white PT Cruiser do something unusual at that point?
Yes.
What happened?
At that point, the PT Cruiser starts to slow. He turns his right blinker on, and he starts moving to the right towards the emergency lane. He slows down to about 10 miles an hour, almost coming to a stop. At this point, I announce over the radio that it looks like he's going to stop based on where he's pulling off the road onto the emergency lane. And at that point, that's when I activate my emergency lights and siren.
Okay, so just to walk that through step by step, you see the car start to slow down.
Correct.
You see the car put its right blinker on.
Yes.
You see the car down to about 10 miles an hour, almost to a stop.
Yes.
The car goes into the right emergency lane.
Yes.
And it's only at that point that you then put your lights and sirens on.
Yes.
And after the car does the blinker over into the right, what does the car then do?
At that point, the vehicle switches its blinker to a left blinker and makes a left turn. It makes a U-turn directly in front of my cruiser, almost around the front of my car, and begins traveling the wrong way on Interstate 75.
Okay. So we go from right blinker to left blinker.
Correct.
And your lights and sirens are on.
Yes.
At the point he actually makes the turn.
Yes.
What do you do when the PT Cruiser starts traveling southbound in the northbound lanes of 75?
At this point, I announced that he's now driving the wrong way. I knew I had another officer coming. As soon as he passes across the front of me and I realize that he's not stopping there, that he's going to continue, I make a U-turn with him there to continue to try to stop him.
And did you see a backup officer approaching at that point?
Yes, that's when I see Officer Gillis's lights coming northbound on 75 towards us.
And Officer Gillis put her lights and sirens on as well?
Yes.
And then does Officer Gillis also make a U-turn? Well, let me back up. After the white PT Cruiser makes the U-turn, does Officer Gillis have to do anything as the PT Cruiser approaches her?
Yes, as the PT Cruiser approaches I can see her lights coming. I see the PT Cruiser veer into her path. And at that point, she takes evasive action and veers out of the way of the vehicle as we both pass it before she makes a U-turn.
And so then, after all three of you make the U-turn, then it's the PT Cruiser traveling southbound, and then are you the next car behind him?
Yes, I'm vehicle one, the first vehicle in the pursuit behind him.
And then Officer Gillis is behind you?
Yes.
Were you able to continue the pursuit southbound in the northbound lanes?
Yes, at that point we continue the pursuit south based on the charges we had and the fact that there was no immediate place to exit the lanes of travel we were in. We followed behind in the right lane.
And when you were able to, did you then exit off of the northbound lanes to get over into the southbound lanes?
Yes, we did.
And when you did that, did you lose sight of the PT Cruiser for a period of time?
Yes, we did.
And as you then are traveling southbound, is Officer Gillis still behind you?
Yes, she was.
And do you still have your lights and sirens on?
Yes.
As does she?
Yes.
And are you able to accelerate and get down and catch up to the car again?
Yeah, once we exited, we got back on into the right lanes, the southbound lanes of 75, and we were able to catch up and reacquire his vehicle.
And then at that point, are you going paralleling him basically?
Yes, we are.
He's southbound in the northbound lanes, you're southbound in the southbound lanes.
Correct.
As you begin to approach down towards the university exit in Manatee, what did you see going on?
At that point, I see looked like a wall of lights across the northbound lanes there. Based on what I saw, it looked like they had a roadblock set up. I didn't have communication with them, but based on what I saw, that's what it looked like, was a roadblock.
Okay, and when you say you didn't have communication with them, are you talking about the other agencies at that point?
Yes, I'm talking about the other agencies that were involved. At that point, we didn't have direct radio communications with them.
Can you estimate how many police cars you saw out there in that area?
There were several. If I had to take a guess, it'd be at least a dozen.
Did the white PT Cruiser come to a stop before reaching the actual barricade?
Yes, it did.
And what do you do at the point that the PT Cruiser came to a stop?
At this point, I pull my vehicle up to the median, into the grass there in the median. I exit my vehicle, jump over the median there, and begin running towards the suspect vehicle.
Were any of the other officers already out of their vehicles and approaching the PT Cruiser by the time you were approaching?
Yes, there were some officers from one of those other agencies that were already approaching.
Did other officers have their firearms drawn?
Yes, I did.
So you and Officer Gillis, did you join the other officers that were there surrounding the car?
At this point, that's when I approached. Like I said, we didn't join them. I didn't have communication with them. I could just see that they were yelling commands to him.
Okay. And what sort of commands were being yelled out?
I could hear "show me your hands" and just other commands I can't specifically remember.
And when I said join them, you actually go up to the vehicle itself, right?
Yes, at this point I decide there's officers already covering with their weapons out. At this point I decided I'd be the one that would attempt to go hands-on and make the arrest.
And by hands-on, you mean what?
It means I have my hands clear. I can do what needs to be done if I need to open the door, if I need to break a window, or if I need to actually be the one that places him in handcuffs.
Okay. As you and the other officers are surrounding the PT Cruiser, some with their firearms out, were you able to see into the car?
We were, but it was a little distorted from the lights and things like that.
Okay. Could you see where the driver's hands were?
Yes, I could.
Where were they?
They were on the steering wheel.
Could you see where the person's, face was looking?
Yes.
And where was the person looking?
Straightforward.
Okay. Did you hear the driver say anything?
No, I did not.
Did you see him reach for anything?
No, I did not.
as people are yelling and the commands are being given, was he doing anything other than hands on steering wheel, staring straight ahead?
No, it was not.
Okay. When you mentioned that you tried to go hands-on, what did you try to do to get into the vehicle?
Initially tried to open the door, saw the door was locked. At that point, that's when I utilized my baton and first broke out the driver window and the front driver window, and then the rear left window.
And as you're using the baton to break out the windows, I would imagine glass is going everywhere.
Correct.
What does the driver do?
Stays in the same position, hands on the steering wheel, looking forward.
Not saying anything or responding to what's going on around him?
No.
Were you and the other officers continuing to give him commands?
Yes, we were.
And did he respond to those commands?
No, he did not.
Did you have to physically do something to get the driver out of the vehicle?
Yes, we did.
What did you have to do?
At that point, I was able to get a hold of his left arm there, wrist and arm. We had to physically remove him through the window once we were able to get the seatbelt off of him.
Okay. As he's brought out the window, is he taken down to the ground?
Yes, he is.
And is he, while you're getting him out the window and out of the car, is he actively resisting you in any way?
No, he's not.
He's just not complying?
He's just not complying, not doing anything.
When he is down on the ground, and I assume he's getting handcuffed behind his back?
Yes.
Okay. Was he resisting getting handcuffed behind his back?
No, not actively.
Okay. Just not complying with your
Just
commands?
not complying. We were having to do everything ourselves.
And after he was handcuffed, was he walked over to one of the police cruisers?
Yes, he was.
And as he is being walked over to one of the police cars, did he do anything like try to break free or run or anything like that?
No, he did not.
Okay. May I have one moment, Your Honor? Just a couple more questions, officer. In the process of taking Mr. Jonchuck out of his vehicle, cuffing him, and taking him over to the police cruiser, did you at any point hear him say anything?
No, I did not.
Okay. And when you picked up the PT Cruiser initially on 275, we think we talked about he was going about 70 miles an hour?
Correct.
And then we had sort of the strange driving on the ramp,
Yes.
75 north. And then when he started going northbound on 75, on I-75, was his speed still at about the 70 miles an hour
Yes, it was.
until the U-turn, right?
Correct.
And then when he started going southbound in the northbound lanes of I-75, it was still about 70 miles an hour.
It varied a little bit higher there, but it varied.
Okay. May I ask the witness to step down for just a moment? I'm going to show you what's in evidence as State's Exhibit 8. I just want to clarify with you. 275, right?
Yes.
And this is coming from the Skyway?
Yes.
Over there?
Correct.
Okay, so at where 275 meets up with 75, you can either go north towards Hillsborough or south towards Manatee, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and the PT Cruiser went up north towards Hillsborough?
Yes, it did.
Okay, and then eventually up, right up here around Moccasin Wallow, that's where you start going southbound again,
Yes,
is
it
that
is.
right? Okay, may I have one more moment, Your Honor? Thank you. No further questions?
Ross?
When you got behind the defendant and he started going up the ramp to go to 275, now this ramp is pretty high, right?
Yes, it is.
And there was a semi-truck, tractor-trailer truck in front of the two of you.
Correct.
How far behind are you from him at that moment?
At this point, I was maybe 5 car lengths. I was trying to stay back.
But close enough to read his tag.
Yes, I
At
came
night.
up on it first, yes.
And then he speeds up to go around that semi-tractor trailer, right?
Yes, he does.
It's only one lane going up there.
Correct.
So he's squeezing by in an emergency lane to get by.
Yes.
So you do the same activity?
Yeah, so this with the semi-truck, he sees what's happening and he kind of moves a little bit to the right, which actually gave me more room to get around him.
Then he starts heading north on 75.
Yes.
And starts to slow down and pulls into the emergency lane on the right.
Correct.
And you're wondering, he's thinking about what to do next, right?
Yes.
So you think he's contemplating what should I do,
Objection, relevance and speculation.
Oh,
correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then he makes a U-turn.
Yes.
And when he makes that U-turn, he drives aggressively at Officer Gillis, right?
Yes, he does.
Causing Officer Gillis to take evasive action to get out of the way.
Correct.
Now, Officer Gillis had her lights and sirens on.
Yes.
So he would have known she was a police officer.
Correct.
And when he made this turn, he wasn't looking at you, was he?
No, he was not.
He was paying attention to how he made this turn.
Yes.
Okay. And then he accelerates
Correct.
up to 75 miles an hour.
Correct.
And then later up to 80 or 90 miles an hour.
Correct.
And then eventually he gets stop sticked, right?
I didn't see directly, but that's what I was informed later.
Okay. So you didn't see the stop stick?
No, I did not.
When did you learn that he had been stop stick?
I believe it was later that night.
Okay, so you didn't know it when you went to put hands on him,
No, I didn't know when the vehicle came to a stop, no.
but he had been stop sticked.
Correct.
So that means his tires are flattened.
Yes.
And there's a barricade
Correct.
of cars.
Yes.
He couldn't go anywhere.
No.
So when he stops, he's got nowhere to go.
Correct.
And he's told to keep his hands where you can see them,
Correct.
and they stayed on the steering wheel.
Yes.
But any other command, he didn't follow.
Correct. He didn't obey any other command to exit the vehicle or anything.
And Moncha? Nothing further.
anything further?
Just a moment, Your Honor. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Any questions for Officer Souza from anyone? No? Can he be excused, defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
State?
Yes.
You're excused. Thank you for your testimony, Officer Souza. time for lunch. 12:35, we'll reconvene at 1:30. Please don't discuss the case. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Jury's out of the hearing, court now.
Anything you need to talk about?
Judge, we have, this afternoon, we have an additional 3 witnesses, and that's all we are able to call today.
You need to get more in here. Don't have the time to do it this way.
Judge, I understand, but my client's entitled to a fair
I
trial.
understand.
And the courts keep telling us we have to go faster. We're going as fast as we can, Judge.
I've given everybody the opportunity to take the breaks, to do what they need to do. I'm in charge of making sure it's orderly and efficient, and that we get done as soon as possible, yes, but not forsaking his right to a fair trial. Yesterday, I said, you're gonna need to have 5 hours of witnesses here, because it was what I foresaw it yesterday. The state said they could be done by 11, I don't think they were done till, I guess, almost noon. That's what I said, I'm not gonna stop the trial early because you haven't gotten your witnesses here. You gotta take them out of order, you gotta get somebody here to testify.
Judge, we'll call it in. I mean,
Okay.
that's all we can do. But
I understand.
I mean, we have a witness under subpoena that's refusing to come in, so we
Well,
can't
I'll
call
do
it.
what I need to do to get the person here. Do you want me to do something to get the person here?
Well, what we would suggest, and I'll let the state know, it's Elaine Van Drone, who was the person that called in and suggested to him that she saw the car go through the red light at 100 miles an hour. They went and found a red light camera that would verify that. So I have Detective Harper here. He's the one that talked to her. If the court allows me to bring in hearsay testimony from him, then you don't need to call Elaine Van Drone. I can get that information for the jury.
Mr. Ellis?
We're not agreeing to that.
Okay. So you're gonna need to, is she on the witness list? Is it
She is.
he? She?
She is on the witness list. She's been subpoenaed. She was contacted by a victim witness today, and she has refused to come in.
Okay. Do you want to bring me a motion for order to show cause? I'll have her served this afternoon, and maybe she'll change her mind.
Judge, I'd be happy to do that, but I can't because I've got to go try to find other witnesses to bring in.
Well, maybe somebody else can do it.
Judge, the issue we're having, why we have these witnesses, every day we've broken after victim witness is gone. So we're going down there, excuse me, yes, like last night exactly, about, it's like 7 o'clock. We're trying to get in contact with witnesses. We don't have cell phones for them. It's after hours, and we can't get cell phones from them from victim witness, so they're closed. So we're going down first thing in the morning and saying, get us who you can get us. But we've spoken to a couple witnesses due to availability. They're not available until tomorrow, and so I don't know who on the list we're thinking we could get. And that's... And unfortunately, with all the witnesses and the length of the trial, we've had to, I mean, there's nobody that's just said, okay, I have blanket availability for the next 3-4 weeks, you guys call me whenever. And so the court had indicated, obviously, a willingness to work with us based on who we were able to get in and put them on. And I think you even said if we have to break early some days because we're out of witnesses, that's fine.
I did. However, yesterday, it's not like an unexpected event. No one said, I asked Ms. McNeil, Can you get people in for 5 hours? Yes, I can. Mr. Ellis represented at the beginning of the case, the state was gonna call a dozen witnesses, so it was gonna take 2 days, and they'd be done. It's 2.5, and they've called a few more. So it's not like people went on notice. Ms. McNeil didn't say to me, oh, we can't do that, we only have 3 witnesses.
Well,
Nobody said, oh,
we didn't know at the
Ms.
time, Judge.
Manuel, don't interrupt me. Nobody said we only have this. She said, yeah, we got plenty of witnesses. So to me, how many witnesses do you have? How many witnesses are you about going to call for your case? Ballpark figure.
While they're counting, Judge, just so, yesterday, we had no chance to attempt to get any witnesses together. Over lunch, we did a deposition. We had 20 minutes to get back to the office, shove some food in our face, get back up here. On the breaks, we can't have meaningful discussion because the courtroom is mic'd. We can't go back down to our office over 15 minutes because as soon as we get down, we come back up, we're starting again. So we can't call witnesses on breaks. The only time we're able to reach out to those witnesses is when we break for the day.
Well, the back room is not mic'd. The conference room back there is not mic'd. So how many witnesses do you think you'll be calling for the defense during the course of the defense? Not exactly, but approximately.
About 17, Your Honor.
It's not that many, actually. So other than the 3 people that are lined up, is there anyone else in that? How long will the 3 people take?
I would say less than 3 hours.
Okay, so then we're at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. Is there anyone else on that list? The other 14 that you could get in and put on at 3:30 or 4 o'clock? Because we're wasting hours that we have.
Our case would not make sense. We would like to not have to call them out of order, but we can try to find somebody if the court's ordering us to.
I'm not ordering you to do that. I'm expressing my displeasure at time that you knew you had to fill yesterday. That's why I went through this exercise.
And if I could just respond, one of the witnesses we want to call is sick and so can't come in. The other witness, Ms. Torres, is the attorney, and due to scheduling issues, we spoke to her last night. Thursday morning is when she can come in. So it's not that we have everybody lined up to go Thursday. We just have a break today because Torres couldn't come in and the other witness is sick. And now we're having Ms. Madrone refuse to come in, but that's...
Well, you need to bring me in order to show cause, otherwise I'm not going to be very empathetic about the whole thing.
Right.
Additionally, when you talk about having a fair trial, one of the aspects for a fair trial is for the jury not to be exasperated and angry because they're giving us the time and then we quit early. And that usually inures to the side against where we're hearing the witnesses. I'm obviously not going to say anything, but when you talk about having a fair trial, part of that is their perception that people are being considered. So, with that said, I guess you do what you can do. I'm not going to order you to do anything differently. I just am disappointed that we cannot use the time. Anything else?
Okay. All rise. We're being recessed till 13:30 according to the courtroom clock.